You can't breathe. The air is thick with incense and sweat, and the walls around you are closing in. Not stone walls, but flesh, heat, the press of bodies in a space too small for this many people. You're not supposed to be here. No one is. But tonight, in a nameless room in the most dangerous quarter of the ancient world, two women are about to compete in a contest so shocking that even writing it down 2,000 years later feels like breaking a law. The Empress of Rome has just thrown down a challenge to the city's most famous prostitute. The wager: who can satisfy more men before the sun rises? There is no prize, no gold, no land, just victory, just proof. And what happens in the next 24 hours will be recorded by 4 different historians, debated by scholars for millennia, and ultimately lead to an execution so swift that the Empress won't even have time to understand she's about to die. Before we go any further, I'd love to know, where in the world are you watching this from? It still amazes me that a story this old, this buried, can reach people across every time zone and continent. The year is 48 CE, and Rome is the center of gravity for the entire known world. Marble temples catch the Mediterranean sun. Aqueducts bring water from mountains 50 miles away. The Forum hums with speeches, trials, commerce, conspiracy. But inside the imperial palace, something is unraveling. Not the empire, not yet. Something smaller, more human, more dangerous. Her name is Valeria Messalina. She is 23 years old. She is the wife of Emperor Claudius, which makes her the most powerful woman on earth. And according to Tacitus, Suetonius, Pliny the Elder, and Juvenal, 4 writers working within decades of her death when witnesses were still alive, she is also working as a prostitute under a false name in the worst brothel district in Rome. Not because she needs money, because she wants to. The question that has haunted historians ever since is simple and impossible. Why? To understand how an empress ends up in a brothel competing with a prostitute, you have to go back 7 years, to the moment when a 15-year-old girl from one of Rome's oldest families is told she will marry a man she finds repulsive. Valeria Messalina descends from Augustus's sister. Her blood is as noble as it gets. Ancient sources describe her as striking: dark hair, pale skin, features that conform to Roman ideals of beauty. But what people remember most isn't her appearance. It's her gaze. Observers say when she looked at you, you felt assessed, judged, catalogued. She is intelligent, ambitious, and about to have her entire future decided without anyone asking her opinion. Roman marriages among the elite aren't romantic unions. They're political contracts. Bloodlines merged, alliances secured. When Emperor Caligula decides to marry Messalina to his uncle Claudius, no one imagines it matters much. Claudius is 47, walks with a limp, stutters when nervous, drools when agitated. His own family has kept him out of public life for decades, assuming he's too simple-minded for politics. Marrying him to a 15-year-old aristocrat solves a minor problem. It keeps her close to the palace, ensures children with imperial blood, and costs nothing politically because Claudius will never be emperor. Her wedding night, at 15, to a man 3 decades older, a man she finds physically unappealing, must have been traumatic in ways the sources never acknowledge. Roman culture didn't particularly value female consent. Her feelings were irrelevant. Then, 3 years later, the entire world shifts. Caligula is assassinated by his own Praetorian Guard in 41 CE. Chaos erupts, senators debate, soldiers argue, and in the confusion, guards searching the palace find Claudius hiding behind a curtain, trembling. Almost as a joke, they proclaim him emperor. Suddenly, impossibly, the man everyone dismissed as an idiot rules the greatest empire in history. And Valeria Messalina, barely 18 years old, becomes Empress of Rome. The sources are specific. She worked in a brothel under the name Lysiska, which means she-wolf, She paid the brothel owner for the privilege of using a room. She serviced clients who had no idea they were sleeping with the Empress of Rome. Read that again. She paid to work as a prostitute. This wasn't financial desperation. She commanded the wealth of an empire. According to Pliny, she sometimes charged normal rates, other times worked for free. The motivation wasn't money. It was something else entirely, something the sources struggled to explain, because Roman medicine and psychology had no framework for understanding compulsive behavior, hypersexuality, or trauma responses. During the day, she played her role perfectly. She attended state functions beside Claudius. She received foreign dignitaries with appropriate gravitas. She managed imperial household affairs efficiently. Nobody watching her in official settings would suspect that hours later she'd be in the Suburra, anonymous and unrecognizable. But secrecy has limits, and Messalina's behavior began to escalate. The guest lists read like a directory of Rome's power structure: senators seeking favor, generals needing military appointments, merchants wanting lucrative contracts. Once they participated, she owned them. They couldn't oppose her without risking exposure of their own behavior. It was blackmail through hedonism. And it was remarkably effective. Claudius remained oblivious. Or perhaps he chose ignorance. But his advisors, powerful freedmen named Narcissus and Pallas, former slaves who had risen to command empires within the empire, watched carefully. They gathered evidence. They waited, because moving against an empress required perfect timing and unquestionable proof. Then came the competition. Pliny the Elder, writing in his Natural History just decades after Messalina's death, describes it matter-of-factly, as if recording a weather event or a harvest yield. Messalina challenged Sylla, Rome's most famous prostitute, to see who could satisfy more men in 24 hours. Picture it: 2 women, one an empress in disguise, one a professional courtesan, both engaging in what might be history's most bizarre contest. According to Pliny and sources that quote him, both women worked through an entire day and night. The specific numbers vary. Some sources say 25 men. Others claim higher. But the consistent claim across multiple independent historians is this: Messalina won easily, still seeking more partners when Sylla admitted defeat, exhausted. The sheer physical logistics are almost unbelievable. 25 men in 24 hours means a new partner roughly every hour, with no breaks for food, sleep, or recovery. From a medical standpoint, this would cause severe tissue damage, dehydration, and exhaustion. Did it really happen exactly this way? Many modern historians are skeptical. But the story appears in multiple independent ancient sources written within living memory of the events, which suggests at minimum that Romans believed their empress had done something extraordinarily scandalous involving sexual excess and public competition with prostitutes. What drives someone to this? Modern psychology might recognize hypersexuality disorder, a condition where sexual thoughts become intrusive and compulsive, where behavior escalates despite negative consequences, where normal satisfaction becomes impossible to achieve. The pattern matches what sources describe: constantly seeking more, never satisfied, behavior escalating over time, unable to stop despite obvious dangers. Roman medicine had no framework for understanding psychological conditions. They attributed excessive female sexual desire to hysteria, supposedly caused by the womb wandering through the body. A Roman doctor examining Messalina would have prescribed herbs or dietary changes, completely missing any underlying psychological trauma or compulsion. She was trapped in patterns of behavior she might not have understood or been able to control, in a culture with no treatment and no sympathy. Back at the palace, her behavior was becoming impossible to hide. Too many people knew. Rumors spread through Rome's streets. Common people gossiped about seeing the empress in the Suburra. Senators who attended her parties whispered to each other. The scandal was becoming public knowledge, except, apparently, to Claudius himself, still isolated in his bubble of imperial information control. Narcissus and Pallas watched and waited, building their case. Messalina had made enemies with every execution she ordered, every political rival she destroyed, every person she humiliated. They were all waiting for their chance. The storm was gathering, and Messalina seemed utterly unaware. Then, impossibly, she made everything worse. In the autumn of 48 CE, Messalina fell in love. Not with her husband, not with anonymous clients, but with Gaius Acilius, by all accounts the most handsome man in Rome. He was a senator, wealthy, charming, politically ambitious. Their affair wasn't particularly secret, but what happened next defies rational explanation. While Claudius was away at the port of Ostia overseeing grain shipments, Messalina married Acilius in a public ceremony. Read that again. The Empress of Rome, still legally married to the emperor, married another man in a public ceremony attended by witnesses. Historians still debate whether this was a political coup attempt or something stranger. A woman so disconnected from consequences that she couldn't perceive danger anymore. Some sources suggest Acilius hoped to seize power. Others suggest Messalina believed she could simply declare a new marriage and the empire would accept it. It was madness. And it was the end. When word reached Claudius at Ostia, his advisers moved immediately. Narcissus didn't wait for the emperor's explicit order. He couldn't risk Claudius wavering, forgiving, or being manipulated again. He mobilized the Praetorian Guard and rode for Rome. They found Messalina in the gardens of Lucullus, a vast estate she had seized from a man she'd executed the year before. She was with her mother, Lepida, who after years of estrangement had come to be with her daughter at the end. The sources say Lepida urged Messalina to take her own life before the soldiers arrived. It was the honorable Roman death. Choose your moment, control your exit. But Messalina couldn't do it. She held the dagger, she pressed it to her throat, but she couldn't finish. So the tribune of the Praetorian Guard did it for her. She was 23 years old. She had been empress for 7 years, and she died in a garden stolen from one of her victims, unable even to choose her own death. Claudius was informed at dinner. According to Suetonius, he showed no emotion. He called for more wine and continued eating. Whether this was shock, relief, or the emotional disconnection of a man who'd survived by feeling nothing, we'll never know. Her name was erased from public inscriptions. Her statues were pulled down, her images defaced. Damnatio memoriae, the formal condemnation of memory. Rome tried to forget she existed, but the historians remembered. They recorded. They could not look away. And for 2,000 years, we've been asking the same question they asked. How much of this was real? How much was propaganda designed to justify her execution? How much was the exaggeration of writers who despised powerful women and wanted to make an example of one who transgressed too far? The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. She likely did engage in sexual behavior that shocked even permissive Roman society. She likely did exercise power recklessly. But the specific details, the contest, the numbers, the public marriage, may have been amplified, distorted, weaponized by writers with political agendas. What we know for certain is this. A teenage girl was married against her will to a man 3 decades older. 3 years later, she became the most powerful woman in the world. And 7 years after that, she was dead, killed by the same system that elevated her, for transgressions the sources still struggle to fully explain. They found her in a stolen garden, unable to finish what she'd started, holding a blade she couldn't use. And in that moment, frozen between choice and execution, between agency and annihilation, she became the symbol every Roman writer would use when they wanted to warn about women with too much power and not enough control. She's still there, in a way, in every retelling, every debate, every question we can't quite answer about who she really was beneath the propaganda and the scandal and the impossible stories. The gardens are gone now. The palace is ruins. The empire is dust. But the question remains. What drives someone to compete when the only prize is proving they can? And perhaps the more haunting question, what world creates a woman who needs to?